Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Hey everyone, welcome back to my movie story, and this is a Halloween special called My Spooky Movie Story. And I'd like to welcome back to the show Emily, who we had on all the way back in episode 2, who talked about her films. And if you haven't seen her episode, definitely go back and check it out. So yeah, Emily, welcome back to My Movie Story, the spooky edition. How you going?
Hi. Brian, I was hoping that you would do some sort of spooky episode, and I'm glad that you asked me to come and do one with you.
Of course, absolutely. I know you love horror films, and I did reach out to some other people, and they're all like, horror films, no way. So, I thought there'd be more people jumping on the bandwagon, but apparently it's just not as many people like horror as I thought. But
Right.
maybe we can convert some people, because there's some good horror films out there. We've got
Yeah.
films from lots of different decades that we're going to talk about in this episode, but some of the modern day horror films are awesome, and we'll chat a little bit about them as well. But yeah, so it's Halloween today.
Mhm.
So tell us what are your Halloween traditions, Emily? What do you like to do on Halloween?
Oh, I'd like to take my kid trick-or-treating. And
Yep.
it's my husband's first Halloween in the US.
Ah,
So we do it
okay.
big here for Halloween. So he's
Right.
really pumped to see everything go on.
Cool. And have you got your costume organized?
Oh, I don't have a costume.
No? Okay.
No.
No,
No,
you're not
just
going to
my
dress
kid.
up?
She's actually going to be, speaking of spooky, she's going to be Megan. I don't know if you saw that
Oh
movie
yes,
yet.
I did see Megan.
Yes.
I liked it. Yeah. Has she been working
Yep.
on the Megan dance, with the floppy arms and all that stuff?
I'm sure she's in her room doing TikTok by herself all the time. So
Right,
it
right.
surprised me.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. That's become sort of a bit of an online sensation, hasn't it? People trying to replicate
Yeah.
the Megan dance and all that. But yeah, and that film's kind of is sort of in the same vein of the film you're going to talk about, I
It
guess.
is.
So yeah, tell us, what is your favorite scary movie?
My favorite scary movie is Child's Play. And
Ooh,
if you folks have watched my last episode, I'm a big fan of 80s movies, and this goes right alongside that.
absolutely.
Mommy, I know who was on the counter. Andy. Who, Andy? Chucky.
Nobody believes you about Chucky. He came alive in my hand.
Oh, for God's sake.
Why won't you believe me?
Because I'm sane, Mrs. Barkley. Sane and rational.
No one believes the truth. Or lives to tell it. There's nothing nice about murder. And there's nothing innocent about child's play.
Yeah, Child's Play. So if anyone's not familiar with the title Child's Play, they're probably familiar with Chucky, the
Yes.
evil looking red-headed doll with the overalls who kills people.
Yeah.
So, but let's sort of go back a little bit. Tell us about your, first time, if you can remember, watching Child's Play, and how old were you, and how did Chucky come into your life?
So Child's Play came out in 1988. So I was about a year and a half at that point, year old. And I don't think I ever willingly watched it. And I know by seeing other interviews online and talking to friends, especially my age, everybody had Chucky come into their life pretty much the same way.
Yep.
Now, growing up, we had like a downstairs, like furnished basement where we would have sleepovers. My brother and sister are much older than me. I snuck downstairs and peeked and was, spying on a sleepover. And my sister was watching it with her friends. And I was terrified and traumatized for a
Mhm.
very long time.
Oh yeah,
And I
can
think
imagine.
that's what's neat about horror
Yeah.
is that if you enjoy being scared, you
Mm.
also don't want to have fear anymore too. So I think because that traumatized me so badly when I was a child,
Mhm.
I kind of like doubled down on it.
Yeah,
It was
right.
exciting for me.
Yeah, it's kind of about facing your fears, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
because in the back of your mind, okay, it's still a movie. but then if it's
Mhm.
done really well, you can lose yourself in the movie, and it
Right.
stays with you. And yeah, did you ever have like a Chucky doll or any sort of Chucky
Oh my,
memorabilia over the years?
no, but they
No?
still sell them in stores.
Yeah.
Like here in the US, we have a store called Spencer's
Yep.
Gifts. I don't know if you have that in Australia. They
No,
still have
no.
Chucky dolls there.
Oh,
And my
I
daughter's
think I'll have to get
terrified
you to
of
buy
it.
me one for Christmas. Yeah.
But I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think one of our previous guests, Marcus, as well, if I remember correctly, in his episode in the background, he's got all these horror movie things, and I think he had a
Oh,
Chucky doll
yes.
sitting on the top of his
Yeah.
display cabinet. I'll have to ask him, but yeah, but
I'm too superstitious. I would be afraid that it would come alive or
come to
something. I
life.
couldn't
Yeah.
have that in my
Yeah.
house.
And Chucky, I guess, he's sort of the original movie possessed doll, isn't he? Like we've seen a few other kind of films like that, but would Child's Play sort of be, I guess, the first mainstream horror film that kind of explored that concept? Do you know?
Not exactly.
Oh, okay.
You know, what's different about Chucky is that he's not possessed. It's not some unfound evil. It's a person.
Mm,
It's a person that's trapped in a doll.
Yep.
And what's more terrifying than a monster is an actual awful evil person. I
mm,
mean, this is a serial murder
Yep.
that decided to escape death by going into a doll.
Yeah.
And Chucky, Charles Lee Ray, is played by Brad Dourif,
Mm,
and he was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
of
To
course.
me,
Yeah. Mm,
Brad playing Charles Lee Ray was more terrifying than Chucky himself.
mm.
He's scary to me.
Oh
So
yeah.
when he starts yelling and his eyebrows go crazy, that was scary to me.
Yep.
Like that was the face of like a bad guy when
Yeah.
I was a kid.
Absolutely. He's
And it
just got
still
that look
is.
about him, doesn't he? He's got that sort of evil look. And he's the actor, Brad Dourif, he's only on screen for like that first sort of 5 or 10 minutes, but then
Yeah.
it's his voice, isn't it? And like
Oh my god.
his voice just gave life to Chucky and probably took that film, because I guess with the wrong actor, that film could have been a complete, absolute disaster. And look,
Oh,
it is
yeah.
campy. It is sort of, a bit of you laugh
Mhm.
through certain scenes of it, but there's some actual scenes that are quite intense, because like
Yeah.
you said, it's this actual demented serial killer who's like now
Right.
got this new lease on life, and he's manipulating the child, and he's picking off all the people that screwed him over, and like he's
Right.
like still a serial killer, but just
Mhm.
in this doll. Yeah. it's
Right. And I think
quite disturbing. Yeah.
sometimes with horror monsters, we don't know what their motivation is. I
Mm.
still can't figure out Michael Myers. I'm like, he's just killing. I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, he's a
Even
whole
though
different thing. Yeah.
right, it's way different. But
Mm,
with Charles Lee Ray, he makes a promise that he's going to seek revenge
mm,
on these few people.
Yep.
So his motivation for killing as the doll is he's first trying to get back out on the streets and go seek revenge against these people.
mm,
Now, after he picks those people off, the plot changes.
Yep.
And he now has to get to the child.
Yep.
So he can not be stuck in the doll.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy that twist,
mm.
that it kind of
Yep.
takes you down a little different story as it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does surprise you, the film. Like it's actually quite well made,
Mhm.
and the special effects are great. And it was, this was a time
so
of
good.
like no CGI, and it was
Mhm.
a puppet.
Yep.
I do have to say the scene towards the end where Chucky they've got him trapped in the fireplace. And
Oh,
I was watching
terrifying.
carefully, and you can actually see underneath him this hand kind of shaking him. I don't know if you've
Oh,
ever,
do you?
yeah, I don't know if
Oh,
you've
I
ever
gotta go
spotted
back and
that.
watch
But
that.
yeah, you'll have to go back and spot that. I'm like, haha, yeah. But still, you look past it, because like you've got to admire the horror films of the 80s for
Mhm.
the practical effects, the puppetry, the
Yes.
makeup. They worked their
Yes.
butt off to make it look as convincing as possible, didn't they?
Mhm. And with Chucky, they took 7 puppeteers to move his body,
Yeah.
and 1 person on a radio control to move his face. That was just for the first film.
Yeah.
And I think what's so great about practical effects is that puppets and animatronics, they're all tangible.
Mm.
Like the actor can reach out and touch them, and it's real. And I think that's more terrifying than CGI. And that's something that in the whole Chucky universe, all the Child's Play movies, they never went to CGI except for this new TV show they have on Sci-Fi.
Right.
But that's something that they really took pride in, was
I
being
did.
very careful
Yeah.
and using the puppet every single time, and
Yeah.
that's what made it special. It
Oh,
was a
absolutely.
real doll.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the early stages where he's basically only just using the features of the doll to communicate. But then once the mum sort of is suspecting what's going on, and then he just turns, and then you see the serial killer in the face, and he and that scene was actually pretty intense. And like then she's like, oh my God, my kid's actually telling the truth here, and
Yeah.
yeah, and they're fun movies, and it's a pretty ridiculous plot basically, but
Yeah.
it knows what it is, doesn't it? Like it's very sort of
Mhm.
self-aware, and
Right.
as the films went on and the different directions it went in. So let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about maybe the original series, I think, of 5 films, because there's been a remake, there's been the TV series, like you said. I
Yeah.
thought there was 2 remakes. Was there one called Charles or something, which came out around the same time as the 2019 remake? Or it might have been like a fan-made Child's Play film or something. But anyway,
Maybe.
I think there's one called Charles. Maybe someone in the comments can tell us. But
Yeah.
but yeah, you've seen, I guess, the original 5 films, I'm guessing.
Mhm.
Yeah. So quickly take us through the Chucky journey and what happens after
Sure.
the first film.
So I think horror always reflects what's going on in society, which is like great, because you can
Yeah.
look at any movie, any horror movie, and pinpoint like where on the timeline this is happening, right?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
what's really cool about Child's Play, and maybe I see this more as a mom, and a mom that has been a single mom, is that like in the 80s we had high divorce rates, lots of single parents, and there's almost like this terror of like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this all on my own? And then you had this like layer of scary on top of it.
Yep.
So it starts there. And then really through 2 and 3, it just evolves with Andy, the main character, the little boy.
Yep.
Andy Barclay kind of just goes on with his life, how he's still involved there. But after we get past 3, that's when it starts to get a little bit more campy. But movies in the late 90s and the early 2000s, that's where they were at. We were seeing a lot of one-liners and
Yep.
humorous things happening, kind of campy.
Yeah,
And
very
it's just,
satirical. Yeah.
it was just the trend,
Yep.
at the time.
It was, yeah. I think
Yeah.
probably, and the 5th one, The Bride of Chucky, where it went off in a complete different direction.
Yeah.
And there's one scene in there that just like is like, oh my God, I can't believe they're actually doing this. And I think you know the one I'm talking about, but we won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it. But it was the late 90s, so it was like Scream had revived horror films, and you had the slasher genre. So I think that's probably what got Bride of Chucky greenlit. And yeah, like you said, it was like those one-liners. It was very like self-aware and satirical. And then I think in Seed of Chucky, that Jennifer Tilly was playing herself, wasn't she?
Yes.
Yeah. So there you go. And then she came along and kind of took the franchise in a different direction too, didn't she? Yeah.
Right. And she was playing the character Tiffany, and she was playing herself, and she was playing Tiffany trying to be herself. So
Yeah.
she was really in 3 different characters, which was
Yep.
really impressive.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, so for Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky, we saw a lot of camp and that, kind of funny one-liner stuff, but then they started to move kind of back to more scary kind of, Child's Play movies. So it was we had Curse of Chucky and then
Yep.
Cult of Chucky. I
Right.
think it was Cult of Chucky. We saw a lot of old actors return, like the girl that played Kyle. I would just Kyle's role was reprised, and Andy, like the original
Yep.
actor. Yeah.
Right. And
Alex Vincent.
I heard those last 2 films were pretty decent, actually. Curse of Chucky
Yeah,
and
they
Cult
were
of Chucky.
pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think what was special about I think it was Curse of Chucky, where you have the woman that's in the wheelchair, was actually played by Brad's daughter Fiona.
Ah.
So there was this like transition where she got to work with her father, and also she becomes Chucky, kind of,
Ah,
it's really
okay,
neat. Yeah, there was this
cool.
torch that was passed off,
Right.
and it's freaky because his daughter, like, she's got the same eyes,
Yeah.
and she's even got that same like laugh. Oh my gosh. So
Cool.
it was like it was meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
great,
So if
great
anybody
casting.
hasn't
Yeah.
yeah, if
Yeah.
anybody hasn't seen those movies after seeing Bride of Chucky and Seed of
Mhm.
Chucky, I highly recommend it. It's
Yeah.
a good refresh.
All right, cool, cool. Yeah, well, after watching the original before we chatted today,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm keen to go back and revisit some of the some of the
Right.
earlier films. I think I saw Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky at the movies,
Oh yeah.
and everyone was just like laughing their heads off at how ridiculous it was and stuff. But yeah, it's like I guess the '80s spawned all these horror icons, like you already mentioned. Well,
Hmm.
Michael Myers was late '70s, but
Yeah.
also '80s. You had Freddy, you had Jason, you had
Hmm.
all these different horror characters, and they're still kind of going today, and they're either
Yep.
continuing to make films or they're being remade or revisited. So
Mhm.
but like, yeah, what do you think it is about '80s horror that's made it sort of last so many years? Like, what makes
I
it
think
stand
they
out?
have rich backstories.
Mm,
It's just not the monster that appeared from nowhere. It's not just a slasher film.
yep,
They're real people
yep,
that have like a supernatural element to it. So
mm,
people feel like there's some kind of relatable aspect there
for sure.
because there's human there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I guess with a lot of the '80s horror films, all of the victims were just whoever was in the crossfires, like they were just sort of random.
Hmm.
Whereas with the more
Yeah.
recent horror film series like Scream and stuff, it's all
Hmm.
targeting the specific group of people and all of that. But
Right.
yeah, which is different, but different time, different sort of, focus and all of that. But so with the original Child's Play, do you have like a favorite scene from the film or a favorite moment?
Oh, from the original one.
Yeah.
You stumped me there. Oh, I don't know if I should
Yeah.
swear, but it's so adorable and awful when Alex Vincent, as a 6-year-old playing Andy Barclay, says Chucky says that oh my God, what does he said? He says the B word. He calls the friend that gets pushed out the window.
Yeah.
He calls her the B word, and it's like, oh my gosh, did that just come out of that cute little boy's mouth?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. You
Yeah.
have to often wonder, like, when they had kids in horror films back then, like, was that traumatic for them? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
how did they get around that? But
Yeah.
the
And I
kid
know
did, he did pretty good. Yeah.
he said that everybody said that he was so professional as a 6-year-old.
Mm,
And he talks about that one scene where he cries when he's in the hospital and they've got him locked up, and
mm.
he's saying, Chucky's coming, he's gonna come and kill me, and they don't
Oh, yeah.
believe him.
Yeah.
He slides down the chair and just starts sobbing.
Oh, yeah.
And that's like it just like hits your guts, right?
Mm,
To see
yeah.
a child in that much distress, and it just looks so real. I
Yeah.
mean, the actor said
I
that
remember
like
that.
he was dreading that as a kid because he
Yeah.
just wanted to have fun.
Yep.
But he said because he was dreading it for so long, he just kind of was able to just let everything out at once.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting how they do it with kids. Like in the recent It remake from 2017, like the
Yeah.
start of the film with Georgie, and like that's horrific, that scene.
Yeah.
They actually filmed that at the very end of the production. So
Oh.
like Bill Skarsgård
Mhm.
had been playing It for like 2, 3 months already, and then they filmed that
Yeah.
scene. But they had the kid on the set, and he filmed other scenes first with the other
Yeah.
child actors, and he saw, Bill Skarsgård in costume and stuff, and then eventually they filmed the scene in the sewer drain. And I was reading
Yeah.
about it, and they said, yeah, there was one point where the kid he got really scared and really upset, and then they kind of tried to, they gave him a break, and then the director went back to him and said, do you think you could try and bring that emotion back out just for this one take? And apparently,
Mhm.
the scene where he gets his arm bitten off and he's
Yeah.
crawling away and crying, like they did that in only like one take, I think. Like because it was such a traumatic thing for him to do, but it was really effective as well. So yeah,
So,
it'd be interesting to film a horror film with kids and try and guide them through that
right.
process and making sure it doesn't scar them for life and all of that. And
Right.
because obviously as a viewer it can be sort of traumatic as well. Yeah. Did you ever have like any
Jarring, at
nightmares
least.
about Chucky after watching the film,
Oh,
or?
I'm sure I did. I don't remember any specifically, but I'm
Yeah,
sure I had a lot of nightmares.
definitely. Yeah, and have
Yeah.
is this a film you'll let your daughter watch, or has she seen it, or would you let her watch it?
No, Jordan actually doesn't like scary things.
Okay.
She likes
Yeah.
things that are like creepy, like
Yep.
Wednesday.
Oh yeah, yeah,
um,
yep.
she watched a little bit of the Netflix show Midnight Mass with me, which I was surprised because that's like
Okay.
scarier than most things.
Hmm.
But like I said, she knows Chucky because she's seen the doll in the store and it's so scary to her.
Yep.
And she knew that I was going to be on here talking with you about it. And she was like, whoa, no,
Right.
whoa, I hate that guy.
Yeah, yeah. He's pretty creepy. He's pretty creepy. Like my
Yeah.
wife Nicole had a very short-lived fascination with horror films when she was a teenager.
Oh,
Like it only
yeah.
lasted like a year, and it was, I think she particularly watched the Chucky films.
Mm.
And but she won't watch any horror films now. So it's like, yeah, quite often I'm watching horror films on my own. But that's
Yeah.
fine. Like I don't get scared or anything. That's fine.
Oh, come
Um,
on, Nicole, hold his hand.
yeah, yeah, no. But there are some films that kind of get under my skin, like I have to admit. Yeah. Do you have any sort of other honorable mentions, like any other horror films, old or new, that you like, or you want to give a
Yeah.
shout out to?
I really like Candyman.
Oh
If
yes,
and
Candyman.
I like the original and I like the reimagining that came
Mm.
out a couple of years ago. Both are so good.
Yeah, the remake wasn't too bad actually. Yeah. Mm.
Yep, I like that.
Yep.
What else? I do like the Halloween movies as much as
Yeah.
I was just ragging on Michael. I like the Halloween ones.
Yeah.
I like the movie The Guardian. If you haven't seen that before, it's about
No.
like a tree's spirit that tries to like eat babies. It's
Oh God.
sounds different, but it was interesting.
The Guardian.
And
Okay. We'll look it up.
I
Yeah.
really I really like these are kind of like cheesy 80s, but I like Phantasm,
Oh, Phantasm. Yeah.
which is
That was
funny because I work at a funeral home, so
right.
it's just like even more entertaining now.
Yeah, because the
And
tall man's like he's like a mortuary guy or whatever, or like a
yeah.
yeah, yeah. That
Um
was those were sort of, yeah, that was a whole other kettle of fish, those films. They're very,
right.
very bizarre. Yeah.
And I do have a recommendation. It's a don't knock it till you try it campy movie, but it's called um um Chopping Mall.
Oh,
Chopping
Chopping Mall.
Mall.
Is that the one
Have
with
you
the
seen
robots?
Chopping Mall before?
No, is that
Yes.
yeah, I've seen the documentary that talks about it, but I haven't watched the film, no.
Yeah. And that's the like I think I watched it because I saw somebody do like a video about it and I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, I'll give it a chance. And I liked it a lot. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
saw a little coverage of that in this documentary series called Into Darkness, I think it was,
Mm.
which was a three-part series about all 80s horror films. Each of
Oh
these
yes.
documentaries goes for like 3 or 4 hours, and it is like, for any 80s horror fan, it is a must. It is a must watch. I think you can
Right.
see them on Shudder, the platform Shudder,
Mm.
which is all horror movies and
Oh,
stuff. Yeah, so
such a
that's
cool
really
streaming
worth a watch. And they
platform.
interview all the actors
Yeah.
from back in those days as well, which is cool.
Cool.
Yeah, but oh, there's so many horror films, absolutely. And yeah, so Child's Play, how would you sort of, I guess, do you have an order of the films, like the ones that you've seen, one that you like the most, or one that you would rewatch the most? Could you
Out
rank
of
them?
all the Child's Play ones,
Yeah,
I mean, the first one's the best
yeah, for sure.
because you're really like figuring out everything. But I do
Yeah.
have to say, with Bride of Chucky, I didn't know this actually until I read it. The opening scene is Tiffany, I believe, in her trailer. It takes place in Lockport, New York, which is like 20 minutes away from where I live.
All right.
So I'm like,
Awesome.
I gotta watch that again.
Yeah, yeah, just go drive over and have a look at the locations and that. Yeah. Yeah, and
Right.
I guess
Yeah.
living in the States, there'd be quite a few movies and TV shows filmed pretty much wherever you live, really.
Yeah.
You can go and visit these
Yeah.
things, and not so much in Australia. I mean, we have
Mhm.
some big film studios in Melbourne and Sydney, but it's all closed sets, and occasionally
Yeah.
they'll use the Sydney and Melbourne city as a backdrop, but
Mhm.
you don't we don't really have a heap of well-known film locations here, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
yeah, I know in the States, like, I've done a few movie tours where it shows you all these
Mhm.
places where films were made, which was cool. Awesome. All right. Well, Child's Play, Chucky, demented, traumatizing, funny as well. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely right up there as one of the horror staples. I think, like, you couldn't imagine the horror movies without Chucky. Like, it's Chucky, Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers. They're kind of like the
What a
gang,
face,
the
right?
original five,
What a
right? Yeah.
face. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
how 4 or 5, I don't know how many that is, but yeah.
And one day we might get a Chucky versus Freddy movie.
Oh, really? Okay. Oh, interesting. They did Freddy versus
They did
Jason,
make
which I
that.
didn't mind. I thought that was all right. And then yeah, it could be. I did hear a rumor years ago that about Michael Myers versus Chucky, that that apparently Michael Myers finds the Chucky doll, and then it controls him or something and tells him to go and kill these other people. But who knows? I don't know. We'll see. But it could be, if it's done well, it might be all right. But who knows? All right, cool.
Either
So
way, we'll give it a chance.
we'll give it a chance. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thanks, Emily, for coming on to the My Spooky Movie episode and talking about Child's Play, and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Keep it spooky.
All right. Catch you later. See ya.
Bye.